So we set up design conformity in order to respond to a market demand where furniture designers needed the ability to report the carbon impact and identify materials.
Yeah, so looking at the materials that they can use to reduce the impact of the products that they're designing.
Solid surface materials, timber, acrylics, because it's the combination of those factors and designing those into a piece of equipment or a piece of furniture that the challenge is and ultimately to make that more sustainable.
Well, of course, because if you have a material that says it's made from recycled materials, that doesn't mean it can actually be recycled, because unless you can take those materials apart, separate them out into their individual materials, then you can't actually recycle it, and it has to be a waste item.
So it's like combining those factors of taking the materials, selecting those materials, using it in the right design application, and then reporting and recording the environmental impact of that product. I think there's EPDs are great. There's no doubt that EPDs are really, really good. EPDs are like that window of time, that snapshot of time, and it doesn't take the design influence. It doesn't allow for how long it's going in store for, what might happen to it afterwards. Can you design it in such a way that it could be reused, repurposed? And that's why I think our end-to-end life cycle assessment, our cradle-to-cradle assessment, gives designers what they really, really need.
So by doing that, we can take our course into universities and we can talk to their students, we can teach their students how to run this sustainable design process and actually design in or out particular parts that they need to. So using the best materials, designing for disassembly, following a circular process and considering that end of life aspect right from the beginning of their careers, so that when they actually go out into the world, they are sustainable designers by nature, because having done a course, having gone through the process of learning about it, they're already on the right track.
I suppose in a way, we're taking all that industry knowledge and we're re-imparting it to the next generation of designers in that kind of circular knowledge process. But bringing in industry companies. I think part of the problem with conventional standards is that they don't bring in industry experts, materials experts, manufacturing experts to have an influence on the design.
Yeah, I think we're kind of trying to join that gap between manufacturers and designers so that they're kind of talking the same language in terms of sustainability. So a lot of designers know what they want to try and achieve, but they either don't know how to do that or don't know what the terms mean. So like if a material manufacturer is saying something's got a percentage of recycled content, or it's recyclable, or it's from renewable resources, like what do those things mean in reality, and how can we articulate that to designers to make the best design choices when they're designing a product or designing a whole scheme, for example. So it's about like educating designers on materials, but also the processes that they can go through to design things better.
I think technical specification sheets have a value, but the problem is that everybody's created those values in slightly different ways. And as a designer, the challenge is that more sustainable? Is that more sustainable? Because if this lasts much, much longer, but has a slightly bigger carbon footprint, surely that is more sustainable.
But not necessarily. I mean, you have to think of the whole picture. Just because at one point in its life it looks more sustainable, that doesn't mean that it's actually going to end up being more sustainable if at the end of its life it only lasts, say, 5 years and then it has to be disposed of. Whereas this other material that costs more carbon right at the beginning, but actually it has a much longer life, and then it can be taken apart and reused, recycled in these other channels, which we don't necessarily think about right from that beginning, because it's a possibility. That actually could end up being a much more carbon efficient material.
It's about teaching people how to weigh up those decisions as well about, okay, am I choosing material that's going to be recycled, or am I choosing for longevity in a product?
Well, I think it's really important for us to inspire the next generation of designers. We've also set ourselves this challenge of reducing 10 million tons of carbon from within the supply chain. We want to achieve that by 2030, and our ambition is to work and collaborate with designers, associations, universities, suppliers to help us achieve that goal, take that carbon out of the supply chain.